Good morning. Western news media tend to be dismissive of the BRICS countries and the giant population centers across the Global South. This is causing permanent damage to our standing across the world and economic damage to our own companies. If you've been watching this channel a while, you're probably tired of seeing charts like these. But for global business executives and managers, these data show us where markets are going to be. They're where the customer is going to be and where the money is going to be. And while our officials have been mostly concerned with strengthening the NATO alliance and having fancy dinners in Brussels and Washington, a new economic bloc is forming between countries literally everywhere else. And China and Chinese companies are taking markets everywhere. These are the 20 largest consumer markets in 2030, which is just 6 years away. And the percentage increase from 2 years ago, 2022, to 2030. A consumer is someone with at least $12 a day of disposable income. That's after rent, housing, food, medicine. China's consumer class will grow by 15%. India's will go up by 46%. Indonesia up 27%. Japan down 3%. Pakistan up 30%. Bangladesh up 59%. Vietnam up 34%. Philippines up 35%. Thailand 10%. Iran 11%. That's Asia. What is the outlier in that list? Japan, whose consumer class will drop by 3% to 118 million by 2030. Down in South America in yellow, Brazil will grow by 9%. Brazil in 2030 will be a much more valuable market for companies than Japan. Indonesia will have 40 million more consumers than Japan. Is that reflected in our diplomacy or in our media coverage? A quick question to my American and European viewers here. What is the capital of Indonesia? When was the last time you saw a media report about Indonesia on the news? Here are the data for the actual increases. India's consumer class will grow by 419 million people by 2030. That's the increase. The entire population of Germany is 80 million or so. In the next 6 years, India will grow their consumer class by 5 Germanys. There's Indonesia again with another 75 million. For global business executives, where do you think 10% compound growth is more likely? In Europe or in Asia? Where do you think you're better off, in New York or New Delhi? And do your efforts in marketing and branding reflect these realities here? That 95% of new consumers across the world in the next 6 years are going to be in countries outside North America and Europe. With all that in mind, let's look at the newest sales data from BYD, a Chinese car maker who is now the biggest electric vehicle company in the world. BYD doubled its overseas sales in the first 3 quarters of 2024. They're effectively locked out of the American market, and there's not much happening for them in Europe either. So all these giant gains for BYD are outside North America and Europe. Revenue is up 24% on the year, and now they're making more money than Tesla. Brazil is the biggest market for BYD, where they sold over 51,000 cars, more than 8 times what they did last year in Brazil. BYD increased its sales 900% in Brazil in 1 year. Alex Strom is a middle-aged banker, so let's assume he can afford to buy any car he wants, and he bought a BYD hybrid. He likes the technology and can't complain about the price tag either. That's Brazil. BYD sales in Thailand are up 7 times to 15,000 vehicles during the 9-month period. BYD wasn't in Thailand at all 2 years ago. They just showed up in November 2022. And now they're in 3rd place there, behind Toyota and Honda. Indonesia and Malaysia are also way up. In Germany, BYD sales fell 42% to 1,600 cars. BYD sold 51,000 cars in Brazil in 9 months. They sold 15,000 in Thailand, and they sold only 1,600 in Germany. Lots of that has to do with high tariffs and taxes. But the takeaway is that BYD sells 10 times as many cars in Thailand than they do in Germany. Is Thailand on this chart? Yes, there it is. Thailand's middle class will grow by over 5 million people, and Germany's won't grow at all. Brazil already has more consumers than Germany. In fact, Brazil has more consumers than any other country in Europe. Suppose you're a sales manager at BYD or any Chinese company, and you've got seniority, and you can choose your next overseas post. Where will you go? Germany or Brazil? Italy or Thailand? If you love Beethoven and bratwurst, you might go to Bavaria, but if you like money, you'll go to Brazil. Here's Bloomberg, and they explain that it's not just BYD, and it's not just Brazil and Thailand. Chinese car makers in general, Chinese manufacturers in general, are growing market share in the Middle East, Eurasia, Africa. China has taken over all the sales in their domestic market, which is by far the biggest in the world. And so now they're turning to export markets, and they're taking over those too. Felipe Munoz is an auto industry analyst, and he points out that legacy automakers have been negligent, charging high prices, setting up tariff barriers to protect home markets, and consumers around the world are snapping up more affordable Chinese brands. But the negligence is everywhere, across most of our industries and our entire political class, which is prioritize relationships and security arrangements with countries that are stagnant. It was negligence of our top business leaders to chase short-term profits in domestic markets and to throw away precious capital on stock bonuses and share buybacks instead of investing in and doing the hard work to develop relationships in the countries that will add over 1 billion new customers in the next 6 years and 2 billion new consumers in the next 10 years. We business managers, the expats who live in the so-called developing world, in the Global South, we can tell you what all these people are going to be doing with all that new money. They're going to be drinking more Coca-Cola, eating more McDonald's, and occasionally go see a Star Wars or another Avengers movie. And almost everything else they buy will be made in China. 2 billion people, and we won't have a single customer among them. This is Nampu Bridge. Shanghai, be good?
The house did not, for it was founded on a rock. Our Father, who art in heaven,